Alright, hello everyone. In today's video, I wanted to give you guys an update on the Cubic Engine stuff because I've been working on it for about a year now. I've just not live streamed myself, and I recently decided to come back and retry again. So here we are with the version 2.0, which is called the old engine. So first of all, as you'll probably notice, I'm now using VS Code because I figured out how to use CMake. So yeah, it was quite difficult to set up and not that fun to have to figure out what was wrong. But I did eventually manage to do it. So yeah, and now it worked very well. And everything is split up into their own files now, every class, instead of being in one big file, which is very nice because it makes it easy to figure out, hey, whereas it makes it easy to just go in and make changes to a random class or whatever, instead of having to spend 5-10 seconds finding it in a huge file. So yeah, I'll have to do something about this because as you can see, it's including so many different things, and a lot of these things like GLAD, GLFW, GLM, MGI, HR, and so on are unrelated to the actual stuff written by other people, so they are external. All the rest is internal, so I guess split it up into subfolders, I guess, at some point for the external and internal stuff. I also got a core include, which just contains a list of a bunch of core include stuff. So you got GLM, MGI, GLAD, and GLFW, and then you got color. Color just being a simple struct that contains a class actually that contains and struct depending on which one you're using. No, they're actually both classes, so no more. But it just contains a couple of classes related to color. One of them handles it's just the ordinary one, and then you can normalize the color, and that will just put it between 0 and 1 red. I figured out how you normalize colors, and it's actually not that bad. You basically just go in this case it's very simple because the lowest it can be is 0, but it also should go minus something, I believe. But here we can literally just go the red divided by and then I think you would go minus the minimum divided by the maximum minus minimum, I think. But in this case, since minimum is 0, we can just do the current one divided by the maximum. And you just do that for all of them, and you get a value between 0 and 1. And these are all floats because, well, I mean, I don't see why you would need double accuracy here for them. So, yeah. Other than that, not much has really changed here. If you go back in the older one, we can really quickly go take a look at it. Color was also a class. Not much has changed here. I have switched from using the GL stuff to just using normal floats and integers. So yeah, I don't think it really matters because ultimately GL float is just a type define. It's just a redefinition of a float, I think. If we go into it, yeah, it's a Cronus float, which is just a float. So ultimately, GL float is just a different name for float. So yeah, it does not matter. They're basically interchangeable from my understanding. And then I actually have not added vector 2, 3, and 4 yet. I have to get around to doing that. So yeah. Things have changed a lot since then, since I was around here. A lot of this has stayed relatively similar with the window class, I think. If we go down and find the window really quickly. Window. I don't think I changed much here. Yeah, I got a ton of stuff open. I'm currently working on the GLM stuff, so yeah. Um, I mean, most of this stuff stayed relatively the same, right? You got GL window, which is interesting, and then you got GUI window, right? You got GL shader and so on. Um, Stuff like this I've actually changed. Now they are separate, so like the shader program just handles both. If you go look into here, now the shader itself will always just actually have it open over here. The shader will now just handle both shaders, and I've just created a struct that contains the two shader sources. And I called it shader info. Maybe shader source would be more accurate, but I can always change it down the line. It's not like it needs to be fixed right now. And yeah, and the shader automatically goes ahead and deletes it. So, yeah, no need to be worried about that. And then, you have the set uniforms. I just overwrote the same function like plenty of times. I'm gonna add more of these at some point, but yeah, there's a lot of these to add. I could just create a template function probably, but like, well, I don't know how it would work. Because for some of these, you might need to pass through like multiple different variables, and others you might only need to pass through one, and some it might be more like you might need to pass through a pointer, like a value pointer in this case. So yeah, so I don't think that would be easy to do. I would probably need to override it a bunch anyways, so this is just the easiest way. So yeah. We can actually go and continue to look for this. As mentioned, like the Vertex shader, fragment shader, and shader program have all been combined into one program, into one class just called shader. I think if we go look at the normal ones that we made back then, why can't I open them? It's a little strange, all. If you go look here, you'll notice one thing pretty quickly, is that we did the exact same thing here, except I actually had like separate stuff here. So like you'll notice how we had all of this here done. So we had two different APIs basically. We had one that was like an internal one that was more low level, and then we had a one that was a bit higher level with some less stuff to be worried about. So yeah, and here's another cool thing: you no longer have color and texture objects; you just have one object. I figured out how to fix this how to fix that. So now, if you notice, there's a if statement in the fragment shader. I know branching, I've heard, is not a particularly good thing to do in like with shader source code, but like I couldn't figure out how to do the alternative, so this is what I have to do for now. And all we have is a uniform bold that we can just change to true or false depending on if we're rendering a texture or not. And that way we can render both textures and colors with just one shader, so we don't need to switch. So we don't need to have two different shader programs, which is very nice. And here, as mentioned, like here, we just basically have the texture coordinates and the color coordinates, and if the texture and if it's a color, you don't need to specify the texture coordinates, and if it's a texture, well, I mean, you don't need to specify what colors it has, right? So, yeah. It would be cool if you could just combine these two together into like one thing, but I don't know how easy that would be. So, yeah. But oh well, that's for me to figure out later, I guess. And yeah, I have a long to-do list as well, what things I need to get done. Um, on that note, I can show you guys the shader stuff as well because like on the note of like the I guess I can show you guys this, right? Remember back when we used to have buff objects? I should probably scroll down to the buff objects walkthrough. Yeah, I've completely removed this and just gone with like VAOs, VBOs, and EBOs, so they have their own classes now that just they all just have the bind unbind functions added to them. So yeah, I never really saw the point of having a like. After a while, I just kind of was that like having a parent class that the VBO and EBOs can inherit from is just a little bit dumb to me and does not make sense because all it's inherently inheriting is like a couple of variables, one of them being completely unnecessary, and a few functions, right? So yeah, I just ended up like abandoning buff objects and just writing the unbind and bind functions for each of these classes. So yeah. On notes of textures, some things has changed here as well. One of the major ones is that it now does color space detection, so that's kind of nice. It took a while to implement because I had to do a lot of research on why some images were not working properly. Um, and well, let's just say that like in terms of like extension stuff, it's pretty easy. It was due to the fact that it was a different file format, which just happened to use different color spaces, right? So PNGs generally use RGBA while JPEGs use RGB. This means that when you try to render a PNG and you're using the wrong color format, it probably won't render successfully, and same with JPEG. I can always just add more file formats down the line if I need to, so yeah. But yeah, you can detect now, and that's pretty cool, right? That you can now detect, you can accurately detect what color format or what like color space that the image is just based on its extension. I don't know. I mean, if like extensions can, if like specific uh, image file formats support multiple color spaces or not, but like for the time being, the majority of images that I've come across have, but so far like that seems to be unlikely. But maybe there's a image file format out there that does. But they generally only seem to like support one of these. But yeah, they generally only seem to like support like but yeah, so yeah, I heard stuff like I don't know what I was trying to say, but I've heard stuff like bitmaps use BGR, which is just where you flip the R and B channels, so it's now BGR instead of RGB. So yeah, I would have to take a look at that as well at some point. But it's cool that I figured this out. So I might add that in the future and do some experimenting with it. But it's cool that I figured out that you can just do that it's easy to check and confirm that you'll check and use the correct color spaces for the different formats relatively easily. So yeah. And one thing that you'll notice is that there's no error handling at the moment. I have not implemented that. So yeah. On that note, in terms of like mathematics, this is what I'm working on. I've heavily used this code just to figure out what to do. And then this is probably why the biggest changes are in draw, since we're no longer dealing with like multiple different shader programs, I've been able to, I think, simplify it quite a bit now. So now it just basically determines, hey, is it visible? Is it in wireframe? Does it have a texture? And then we bind the different things, and then we render it, depending on if it has an EBO or not, right? So if it doesn't have an EBO, we just go render, and then we render it as using the VO and VBO, and if it does, we use the EBO as well. So yeah. And that's how we do it, right? So like, it's significantly simpler now. Back here, like, I mean, I guess it was pretty simple back then, but like, you know, you had to know whether or not your object whether or not the object had a EBO or not. Now it just automatically handles that for you. So that's very nice. Yeah, like a lot of this cubic stuff has just been turned into something that the window now handles. So the window now handles GLFW initialization, glide initialization, and so on. Instead of it being separate here. And termination wise, it has a terminate function now, Windows, so no real need for this at all here. It's all handled by the window now, so that's nice, you know. As mentioned here, now I use function overriding because I think it looks a little nicer, and you don't need to remember as many different function names. You just need to remember one and all of the different parameters you can put through. And yeah, you know, I think I have significantly, I don't know about the GUI stuff. I haven't actually worked too much on the GUI side of things. I'm pretty confident I have a class somewhere for GUI stuff. Maybe I don't even have a class for GUI stuff at the moment. But yeah, I've also made it incredibly easy for objects to just add vertex attributes. It's just a simple function call, and set texture is just a simple function call as well. Just the texture, like, not too much of that. So it's very simple, right? And yeah, okay. This is the other cool thing, you know. Instead of needing the objects themselves to have, you know, instead of having, let's say, instead of having, you know, a optional parameter for whether or not you had an EBO or not. Now it just simply has two different constructors, so it uses like some sort of function overloading, I guess you can say, here as well, to determine which determines if an EBO or not is actually there. So yeah. So everything is much nicer than it used to be. But yeah, I've not worked on the GUI stuff, I think, yet. It's still something I have to get around to. But yeah, you know, there's probably many more changes that I've forgotten to mention. But these are at least like some of those, right, that, you know, I have not talked about, right? These are at least some of them, right? And yeah, yeah, I'll have to figure out the function stuff. One of the few things I'll say is that like um, texture here, like active texture and so on, is automatically handled, I believe. And here's the cool thing, right? Um, it can actually load. It can technically load like you can technically replace the texture here currently. Like the issue with my current one is that like if you want to change the texture or something, you need to create an entirely new texture, an entire new texture class instance because there's no function to like override the texture or something. Um, which I think is a little dumb because like there's definitely times when you want to let's say change the texture of the object and having to go in and like destroy a class and then create a new one and then go and call the set texture function in the object just to set the texture again. That's just like when a simple function called I don't know texture override or like something like that, call like I don't know override or something which would override the texture or replace which would replace the texture could do the exact same thing. So yeah. Um, but yeah, I don't think I have much left to say, really. Um, so overall, like, I think the API virus and my C++ skill, I decided to take a long break for a reason, it was so I could improve my C++ skills. And I've been using it a lot over the past year now. And I just wanted to say, I think I'm making a lot of progress. Currently, I'm back to I'm almost where gel I'm here. Yeah, so I'm almost back to where I left off last time, which was with the next one, which was coordinate systems. So, yeah. Um, so I will say this much. I think my general, like, I think taking a break was the right decision because coming back now, I have managed to make significant improvements to how I write my code, and how I structure my code and so on. So, yeah. The old structure were really not great, and I think I oftentimes ended up having a lot of frustrations because, like, it would be kind of annoying to deal with. um, but this new one is nice and simple and very straightforward and nice to use. I like it a lot more than the old one. I can tell you that much. It feels a lot nicer to use. I mean, we can just compare like main file. I hate that you can't drag them up. I don't know. But if you go look, like the main file is significantly longer. We're talking about 286 lines compared to like 78 lines. And some of it is definitely that we don't have two. We only have one vertex shader and one fragment shader source. And also we don't have multiple objects. So yeah. But even then, like stuff like this would have to be like two separate function calls, which I've now just turned into like one function, right? Oh, and we might as well talk about object creation, right? Before, you would create a texture or color object, right? And then this would just create the VAO and VBO and EBO, and I'm pretty confident it works the same way now. We have to go to the event drawer because it's actually what handles object creation right now. This is the cool thing, right? Is that like you actually have the event drawer that handles the objects and maintaining them and so on. Instead of it being on like the user side to do that. Because this one has no event drawer. One thing they all noticed that this is missing is a event drawer, which could, handle and contain like the different objects and so on. I don't know why I never added one, because I feel like the code could probably have been quite a bit better if it had one. Even like later on when we would go up to like the new API thing I made, it still did that now intro. And I don't know if it was planned for it to have one. We can check the readme. Actually, yeah, it does not contain anything really. But I think it was the idea that it was meant to have a renderer at some point, right? But this renderer, you just call a function and it creates the object. You call a function and you start the shader. Man. Oh. No need to go through like the same shader stuff that you need. Actually, this does not look so bad, but like, yeah, I always don't have to go through all of this. You just call a function with the shader info and it will handle everything for you. So yeah. But yeah, there's like a ton of code duplication here. Do you want the way this is here? There's no real reason for it to be there, is there? Shouldn't texture update automatically do it anyways? I don't know. Well, maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, so the renderer, what you would call the create object, it would create the object. On that, from here on, it's basically the same, right? It goes ahead and it creates the object. I think it's over here. Actually. And it goes ahead and it creates the object, which actually looks very similar here, with some minor differences, obviously. And then the object actually has a render function. Which it does not here, so the person has to manually go ahead and render it. Which it would do here, but no, it's just calling one function and the entire object is rendered. All of this code is not needed to be duplicated anymore because it's all handled within the class now. So yeah. And on that note, I should probably close that down. Might as well go to the event drawer really quickly and show you some more of it. Yeah, the event drawer has another one, so like you can easily add. Vertex attributes to objects. And from here on, like as mentioned, like I always remember to do this. So like in the old code, I would not always do this if I remember correctly. And so like sometimes, if I remember correctly, like just like going ahead and doing just doing anything really, but like let's say the shader in this case, you might sometimes have to remember to actually use the shader program. This was especially a problem back then when we had two different shader programs, if I remember correctly. Um, but here, like, it's all handled. It always does this whenever the shader needs to be used, so you don't need to have to do that. And then it goes through and it does its thing with like has texture and stuff, and then it renders the object, which, as mentioned, takes you to here. If we go to the window dot cpp, and then we go. There's lots of. I mean, this stuff has basically not changed much since then, really. But if we go into the update loop, it basically looks very similar to this. Except you have the render.render, which actually renders all the objects. You have the for loop here, and it goes for every single object in the objects vector and renders them all. So yeah, very nice and simple, right? Like, yeah, and everything is documented and so on. So yeah, like, I don't know what there's to not love about this anymore. Because like, it's so much more better personally, I feel, than the old stuff is. And unlike the to-do list, like, yeah, that's like it right now. Like, there's ton of stuff like errors for Windows shader and texture classes. I talked about that earlier. Being able to change textures during runtime, I talked about that one. There's objects can have multiple textures. That one, like, I think the last script could not do. The Cubic engine could not do either. And this is the current one that's my problem. Because it was so low level back then, I mean, the object class would like just ask for an instance of the shader class, I believe. I don't actually know how we did this, but I'm pretty confident that we would just have to manually, we just used the shader program that we wanted to use, and the object would figure out the rest. We would just use the shader program, but with the object, if you want the if we want the window to be if we want the code that should rotate and move objects and scale them and so on to be in the object class, we need some way for the object to be able to access the shader. And as mentioned, like, I took a look at like 4 or 5 different solutions, I think, different methods that could solve. Some of them did not work. And eventually I just came to the conclusion that, like, if we just create, like, let's say, a public function that calls that shader, then we can just, when we create an object, we can literally just pass set shader. We can call set shader and pass through a reference to shader class. And call a day with. And now the object class has access to the shader class that the renderer class has. And we might just be able to go and update that every time we set the shader or whatever. But, like, it's so it actually affects, so the objects actually have the correct shader. I should probably add that as well. One of the new things that I actually like about that I actually like in Zone is that, like, I use Copilot now. It became free, and you know what? I feel like it's given me far better stuff now. It certainly helped a lot with like actually doing some of this, because writing some of this can be boring and take forever. It sped it up by a little bit, which is nice. Um, it's also caused some problems, but like I think overall it's been faster. And it's surely not bad because it mostly just copies code from Learn OpenShell anyways, so it's like that's why I'm going to go and copy it anyways from, so it's, you know, why not, right? So yeah, I'll say that much. At least that's what it seems to me, right? So yeah. But yeah, so it's been very nice. I feel like the IntelliSense is finally pretty good on it, right? Because like it kind of reminds me of like a better version of like whatever Visual Studio currently has. So yeah. Well, I think that's it, right? I think we've gone over everything. As I've said before, and as I've likely to say, like I think the overall new API and so on is much better and much nicer than the old stuff that I used to work on. And that's partially because I've spent maybe like the past year occasionally just doing simple projects. Um, I think I can show you guys one of my other projects. I think it's actually on here. I shouldn't show you too much, but I had this stuff right here that I was working on for about half a year ago, and that was one of my projects, right? I want to go back and work on this at some point, but for the time being, I'm busy with the engine stuff, so we'll see. Um, but yeah. I mean, it's not like there's too much for you to see, anyways. Here. Um, so yeah. Um, anyways, so yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.